I'm Kristen, and you're listening to Podcast and Amplify, a podcast for women entrepreneurs who want to amplify their voice and brand through podcasting and grow a wildly successful business. I'm the executive producer and host of 2 shows and an entrepreneur, and I love helping women grow their visibility, mindset, and business to the next level. Each week, I share tips on how to launch and leverage your podcast, and I'm bringing on the very best business leaders to give you advice on how to build your business empire. Let's amplify your voice and business. Hey there, welcome back to the show. So today I want to talk about how you can use this podcasting thing, whether you have a podcast or you like to be a guest on podcasts, to speak on bigger stages, to become a public speaker, a paid speaker. And I really think that podcasting is a great way to begin feeling comfortable sharing your voice in a bigger way. For me, it's really been a stepping stone. I've shared this before, but I never saw myself as a public speaker. Getting on a stage and speaking in front of a room full of people was really terrifying to me and felt uncomfortable. But the more I felt connected to my message, the more I wanted to have a bigger platform, speak to more people. Because when I was speaking from the heart, when I was speaking from a place of authenticity and just really being connected to my message, I felt really lit up. And that's what motivated me to want to have a bigger platform. It sort of overrode all of those feelings of self-consciousness, self-doubt, imposter syndrome, because I knew what I was sharing was truth. It was really felt truthful to me, and I felt like it could impact others. And I realized that podcasting, in part, a big part, was what helped me get to that next level. So this summer, I was able to speak on a national stage for the very first time, and it all happened really quickly. I hadn't ever spoken on a stage before, and I applied for this opportunity and I got it. I did get support with the pitch, but I wanted to talk today about a different path for becoming a public speaker because my path was so different. I didn't spend a year or more speaking at conferences before I got this opportunity. And I think that's because I did several things. One, of course, is having this podcast. 2 is sort of forcing myself to do live events. So live webinars, lives on Instagram. So I had to get really comfortable in the discomfort. And it was that practice that made it feel less scary, less awkward. And then also being a podcast guest was really key, because even though I wasn't speaking in front of a room full of people, I did have to have my message down, my cadence down. I had to get rid of the ums and the verbal tics that are so common. So that was my path to getting on that stage. And then before I even spoke at the national conference, booked my first paid speaking opportunity. So I want to talk about 4 ways that having a podcast has been really instrumental for me in this journey of becoming a paid public speaker. So having a podcast of your own really helps you to hone your voice. It helps you to get clearer and clearer on what your message is, what it is that you enjoy talking about, what topics really speak to you and you get fired up about. Because when you're creating episodes like this episode I'm creating right now, I'm choosing what topics I'm going to share with you all. And I'm choosing that based on what's interesting to me. What do I want to talk to you about for 10 minutes, 15 minutes? What do I think is helpful for you, but also what is energizing to me? Because when I show up energized and I'm giving you value, that's the best possible place to be in. And that translates to you really getting closer and closer every time you do an episode to honing in on what is it that's important to you that you want to talk about that you feel like you can really help people with. And so that's a key thing in figuring out, for a speaking event, like what's going to be your signature talk. And so having a podcast gives you a platform and the opportunity to be able to figure that out. So that's really important, is honing your voice. And what podcasting also provides you is the opportunity to practice. Practicing is so much a part of becoming a good public speaker. Public speaking is a skill, and it's just something that anyone can learn how to do. And a lot of learning how to do that is through repetition. And so if you commit to showing up every week, to recording a show and putting a show out there, that's giving you weekly practice. So at this point, I've done over 70 episodes, and that means I have over a year of practice sharing these solo episodes, practice showing up and having conversations with people through the interview episodes. So having this podcast gives you that opportunity to practice talking about the thing that you're interested in talking about. For me, it's podcasting and community and storytelling and all those things. I get to practice sharing my message with you. So let's talk about if you don't have a podcast. Being a podcast guest really helped me to become a more polished speaker, because on the podcast, as I'm recording right now, I can edit out all of my mistakes. I can edit out the verbal tics, the pauses, anything I don't want you to hear, I can edit out and sound fantastic. But when I'm on a podcast being interviewed, I do not have that control, and I have to be more on. I have to deliver my talking points. I have to be able to think on the fly if I'm asked something that wasn't in the questions. And I have to do it in a way that I sound polished. I sound like I know what I'm talking about. I sound confident. And so being on podcasts as a guest really helps you do that, really helps you prepare. I have to prepare so much more for a podcast that I'm being interviewed on than when I'm sharing these solo episodes, or even when I'm the interviewer. I prepare, but I'm not the one delivering the information. So being a guest is a really, really great way to start practicing sharing your message with a different audience other than your own, where you don't have control over how you sound other than how you're delivering it live in that podcast interview. So I would definitely suggest, even if you have a podcast, to do podcast interviews and be on other people's shows. There are so many reasons why it's a great thing to do as a podcaster. One of them being because it gets you in front of other people's audiences and helps you grow your audience. That's just one way to grow your podcast. But in terms of public speaking, it's a really great way to get that one step closer to becoming someone who speaks in front of people and shares their message. Even though you're just being recorded, you know that people are listening, and you kind of just have that one shot. So it's like you're not quite live in front of people, but it's almost like you have to act as though you're live, because you don't know how much editing there's going to be done on the other person's podcast. And honestly, you don't want them to have to edit you so much. Like, you want to come in and be able to deliver your message and your knowledge in a very smooth, professional way. Having podcast episodes that you've created and being guests on a podcast, those are really great ways to enhance a speaker page, because you can include links to podcasts you've been interviewed on. You can show, yeah, I've spoken about this topic on X amount of podcasts, and you can include links, and you can just show whoever you're reaching out to be a speaker at their event that you have some level of experience of talking about your specific topic. So when you're first starting out and you don't have any speaking experience, these are really great things to leverage and to include in a speaker page. And they'll see that, this person's starting out, but they're not starting from scratch. Either they have a podcast and they've been speaking about this specific topic or sharing their knowledge around this area, or someone's invited them on their show and felt like they were knowledgeable enough to speak on this topic. So it is evidence that you can use when you're first starting out. So it's a place to start from not zero, and especially when you don't have anything, but you want to, get on those stages. Those are my 4 reasons why podcasting can lead to becoming a speaker. So you get to hone your voice and figure out how to talk about the thing that really matters to you most. You get practice talking about it. Being a guest on podcast helps you to practice talking about your topic in a very professional, polished way, almost like you're live in front of an audience. And then you have either your podcast episodes or the guest episodes that you've been on as something to share with organizations that you're pitching to speak to. So it is really a great path to getting to those stages that you want. It's so much about building confidence and taking that intentional, aligned action. And as always, when you're doing something scary and totally outside of your comfort zone, make sure that you get support either from a coach or best friend or a therapist, and make sure you give yourself extra love and kindness. Speaking on stages can be really challenging for a lot of us, myself included. But if you feel yourself really called to share your message, then these are ways that you can start to do that and start working your way towards that stage. So I hope this episode has been helpful for you. And if you have any questions at all about podcasting, please reach out to me in the DMs. I love answering podcast questions and I love being a resource. And speaking of resources, I have several really great free resources on my website. You can go to podcastandamplify.com/resources. And I have a masterclass. I have checklists and a really fantastic workbook if you're just starting out. So you can download those there. And then you'll get inside my email community, which is a really fun, intimate space. And you're the first to hear about any offers that I have going on, any specials, any news, all the fun things. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Podcast and Amplify. If you love the show, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And the best way to support this show is by sharing, rating, and reviewing the podcast. For those of you who leave a review, you'll get the chance to win a 30-minute strategy session or a mini audit of your existing podcast. Thanks for listening, and remember, your voice and what you have to offer is needed in the world. Until next week, take care.